Yeah, welcome to our very first webinar together, HubSpot and Fundraise Up. This is going to be part of a series as we work more and more together. So welcome to how HubSpot and Fundraise Up are changing the nonprofit landscape. Before we get started, we'll let you know who we are and I guess our credentials of how we're qualified to speak about this. I am Will Pope. I am the Senior Partner Manager here at Fundraise Up.
Hi, I'm Julia Ford. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Director of Nonprofits here at HubSpot. And just to embroider a bit, Will, on our titles, my background is all in the nonprofit space. So HubSpot is my first software as a service company. Prior to that, I've done everything from direct service, case management work, a lot of community organizing in Portland, Oregon, where I live, all the way through major gifts, a development director for a number of years. I've done a lot of big events. I was a caterer for a long time, serving specifically the nonprofit sector. The number of house parties that I did for Chamber Music Northwest, just through the roof. But so excited to be on the other side now and really listening and learning from the nonprofit community and then being responsive to needs as a software provider. So Will, I don't know if you want to ground in.
True. You're very right. I worked in the nonprofit space for a number of years, starting off my career, and then moved to a technology company, and helped help up and coming companies adapt to the new technology landscape when it came to cloud. And now I get to do both. So I get to work in the nonprofit space, and with Fundraise Up, which we are an online giving platform. And I get to do that while teaching those nonprofits, how to adapt to the constantly changing technology atmosphere. And so it's the best of both worlds.
Amazing.
I will pass it back off. Yeah.
Cool. One note before we dive in, I know if your webinars at Fundraise Up or anything like ours, we typically have like a Slack channel going, a chat going. This can get lost. So what I would ask for folks, and I'm actually going to go back to the crypto question. So anybody that's joined the call can see the join Slido CTA. So if you go to slido.com and you put in the code 693356, there's an open Q&A that you can use to populate questions throughout the entirety of our discussion today. And then they will populate on a slide at the end. So please use Slido for your questions, not the chat. And know that Will and I will then be able to see them along with everybody else in a sliding scroll at the end, and we will definitely make time to get to them. So slido.com, I sound like I am really advertising this technology, 693356. All right, I'm going to move forward. So today we're talking about generally nonprofits and data. I know you all are here to hear about the integration, and we're going to get to that. But in order to really paint the picture for why it's so powerful and important, we want to ground in data, talking about engaging your supporters online, the general donation experience, the specific integration, and then what comes next. This is part of a 2-webinar series, and we're excited to plant a lot of seeds. And then again, we want to leave a lot of time for Q&A as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump in. So a bit of grounding just in terms of where we, and I use we, as I just mentioned, I'm from the nonprofit sector. So when I say we, I'm actually talking about nonprofits, not really HubSpot, although we are now a part of your community. Thanks for welcoming us. But we did a survey a few years back. This was through Every Action. HubSpot actually participated. And we know the numbers have changed a bit, but they're pretty striking. So most nonprofits are collecting data from constituents, champions, supporters, whatever your naming convention is online, and you're tracking who's interacting with what and how things are performing. But almost 50% of folks in the nonprofit space report that they don't actually understand how your organization is collecting data. You know it's happening, but you're not sure how it's happening, and you're not really sure where it's housed. And about 5% of folks said that they use data in every decision that they make, which means we've got a lot of green space. Today is really all about the user experience. It's about conversion. And what we know about online activity is that if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. So the good news is that 97% of us say that we are really excited to better use data to inform our daily work. And so we want to ground everything today in how a better online donation experience is really just one stop in a user's journey with your nonprofit. And we want that experience to be amazing. We want them to give again. We want them to tell their friends. And we want your organization, your nonprofit, to have as much data as possible to ensure that your constituents and champions do these things, take these actions. So Will's going to dive a little bit into the methodology behind what's called inbound marketing, or what at HubSpot we call the Flywheel approach, in a few slides. But before we get there, we do need to consider how to support you and your organization in crafting a data powerhouse. And we want to do this in a way that's transparent and clear to your end users. So let's call it a consent-based data powerhouse. And we want to give your teams easy to use, flexible, and rich digital ecosystems that make your lives easier. We also want your end user experiences to be richer and more impactful. So we call this taking a crafted, not cobbled approach. Today, we are all seeing a merger of worlds between for-profit and nonprofit, and the bar for how people expect us to interact with them online and meet them where they are has truly never been higher. We are being asked to compete as nonprofits with massive companies in order to attract and retain supporters. And the interactions those supporters have with us is really paramount to our long-term success. We often need to take folks from completely anonymous, having no idea who we are, what our mission is, the work that we're doing, and transforming them into our promoters, into our evangelists, into our brand ambassadors, so to speak. And we want to continue to help you do that and to further your mission without additional investment on your part. So nonprofits turn to a lot of different tools to help them attract, engage, and influence donors to take action. And content to help you with your cause, messaging to update folks on big ticket programs, automation, AI, reporting, and then obviously where we house our data. These are all tools and often disparate software systems that we leverage to try to create this journey from anonymous to promoter. If all of these methods are housed in different technologies and data about your supporters is living in file cabinets, no shade, I've been there, spreadsheets, 5 different CRMs, or in your ED's brain, you pay an unintentional cobble tax, right? Housing things in multiple different places every single day. So almost everything that happens online before a supporter makes a donation, even if their first interaction with your organization was 3 years ago, can and should be measured. And if the data is all in one place, you can architect your internal workflows differently. In our experience, we know nonprofits are doing a lot within every respective department. Marketing and events folks can also be IT. Your database managers can also be your board presentation supporters. Major gifts officers can be program advisors, volunteer managers. Thinking about cross-communication between your departments and evaluating your marketing and communications technology is one and the same with fundraising and donor management software can go a really long way towards decreasing siloed data and reporting. So our partnership, the one between Fundraise Up and HubSpot, was really built to support you in unsiloing activities and getting the most out of your online experience. So Will, do you want to talk a little about traditional marketing?
Definitely, yes. So traditionally, companies think of marketing and converting prospects into customers or prospective donors into donors as a funnel. And many technology companies that serve nonprofits have made the mistake of applying this same method that sales companies use to procuring donors as well. And so this method is very siloed. And what it says is that at the top of the funnel, you are going to try to engage your donors by giving them content, by having them see something on an ad. You're going to try to educate them on what the problem is. You're going to move them down the funnel, try to educate them on what the potential solutions are by having a little bit more engaging content. And eventually you're going to move them to the bottom of the funnel by talking to them and trying to get them to make a purchase or make a donation. But the problem with this is that it ends there. So many they think of it as The donation is made and this whole entire process is over. Well, there's some good things in here, and there's some things that, yeah, a donor journey is like. There is a better way. And this way, in fact, is actually the way most nonprofits are already thinking about it. And sales companies, the for-profit world, can learn so much from the nonprofit world and how you use storytelling and use an entire journey. And the way HubSpot and Fundraise Up have tried to culminate this into one word is into a flywheel. So while inbound marketing and ads and giving content to your donors is still happening right here in this attract stage, trying to educate donors on your brand, on why they need to give, and then engaging them a little bit more as they move to this green section of the flywheel. Making a donation is an engagement, attending an event, signing up to volunteer. But the part of this that is new and is not in the old way is this delight stage. Nonprofits are not thinking of their donors as just getting them to the bottom of the funnel and moving on to the next. You're thinking of them as engaged participants that can be more and more involved with your organizations, the more they're delighted. So I'd love to hear in the chat, well, not in the chat, on our other thing.
No, in the chat, I just realized that I completely missed the ball, dropped the ball on creating. So in the chat for this one, please.
In the chat, how about you tell us exactly, are you spending most of your resources on attracting, engaging, or delighting right now? I know that you're spending resources on all three and you're going after all three, but which one is your main focus this upcoming month? I want to focus a little bit. There's this one spot on the flywheel where prospect turns into customers, and that's donors in our sake, where right on the engage type. And this is the spot when it comes to online fundraising where a donor clicks donate on a website and makes that donation, becomes most engaged. And this is a spot that is very, very, very delicate. So someone could very, very easily move back in the flywheel during this spot if they get distracted, if some friction comes up and they decide not to donate, if another browser tab is more appealing to them. But we with Fundraise Up and HubSpot wanted to really, really focus on this stage because it's one of the most important stages in the whole flywheel. So I'll show you exactly what that looks like when it comes to an online donation form. We can move on. This right here is a little bit of an exaggeration, but if your donation form looks like this, you're not delighting, you're not attracting or engaging any of your donors. I know it's an exaggeration, but you'd be surprised how often I'll give to a large established nonprofit and it'll look something like this. So your real donation form should look a little bit something like this. And so what happens here is we have a very clean, easy to understand, easy to move through the process donation form, and that really increases your engagement. We saw two things when we were looking at exactly what causes the most friction and what causes donors to abandon their checkout while donating. Two of the things we saw was, one, 10% of all people freaked out and left as soon as they were redirected to a different URL or a different landing page. Another thing, we saw that 18% of people left because the form was really long and overwhelming. They saw 1,000 fields and they thought, there's no way I can complete this whole thing. I'm just going to move on. And so if this was on an actual website, you would notice that our form is actually a modal that overlays whatever page you're on, and you're never redirected to a different site. And secondly, you'll see we're not actually collecting all the information we need from the donor right on this page. So they move through a sequential form and are easily guided through the entire process and are never overwhelmed with one screen. Next, we want to make the experience as personal, I can't talk today, as personal as possible. So we use machine learning to collect over 100 different data points, and then we auto-populate donation amounts based on what the donor is most likely to give. One of the things we know that is a donor in Manhattan is probably going to give a different amount than a donor in Nebraska. And so we want to treat them a little bit differently and auto-populate those amounts based on what we know they're most likely to give. Next, all you have to do is ask. How many times maybe have you said to your kids, why didn't you do X? And they responded, well, you didn't ask. We saw this same thing applied to monthly giving as well. If you simply ask someone to become a monthly supporter, we call it an upsell. They chose a one-time gift, and then you ask them to become a monthly supporter afterwards. We saw a significant increase in recurring donors for your organization. UNICEF USA actually saw a 300% increase in monthly donors just from using this upsell. Next, as we're personalizing and engaging our donors, we have to give them the ability to pay how they want to pay. I know that when I am on a website trying to buy something and I have to type my entire credit card number in, I very often don't end up buying that thing. And so giving donors the ability to use Apple Pay, Google Pay, PayPal, Click to Pay is the key to engaging today's generation. And in today's globalized world, you probably have donors across the globe, and they should be able to give in their home currency as well. So our system will automatically present the donor with their home currency based on their IP address when they go onto your form. Finally, as Fundraise Up is strictly transaction-based pricing, and we have no subscriptions, no flat costs, no contracts. Giving donors the ability to cover that cost makes their gift go a lot further. And if their gift also fully pays for the platform and for the processing, and that's transparent from the start, donors are more than happy to give, we've seen. And in fact, 92% of donors cover all those transaction costs on our platform. Finally, in this form, we see that 75% of all US workers companies today have company matching programs. And it might even be higher than that. And it's beneficial to give them a way to start the company matching process right in the checkout as they're making a gift. Our integration with 360 Match Pro lets donors check if their company has a matching program, and even lets them know if their gift's too small for their company's minimum matching threshold, and then goes ahead and asks them to raise the gift, resulting in increased gifts for your organization. Now that the donor's been engaged, they need to be delighted. But first, we have to have a record of them. As HubSpot and Fundraise Up are working together throughout this donor journey, our platforms have to easily sync, or this will be a headache for you, and we don't want that. So we've created an easy process for gifts to be collected by Fundraise Up and then stored and managed and re-engaged in HubSpot. I'll show you a little bit sneak peek of how the integration works. If you're unfamiliar with HubSpot, revenue and transaction are stored in objects called deals. And those deals fall into different pipelines depending on the source of the revenue. And they can have different stages depending on where you're at in the process of receiving that revenue. Our native integration will create a deal for every donation your organization receives in real time, automatically creates that deal, and we'll store these deals in a pipeline titled Fundraise Up Donations, as you can see on the top of the screen. You can store any information you'd like on these deals, including amounts, the donor's name, UTM parameter, designations. You decide how you want that data to be stored. Next, you can decide how that information flows into HubSpot and exactly which field you want the Fundraise Up data to go using mapping rules. So you set up your mapping rules and you send any piece of Fundraise Up data to either the contact field or the deal, or the contact object or the deal object, in any field on them. And finally, as we are focusing so much on generating more recurring donations, we need a place to store the details of those recurring plans. So we create a custom recurring plan object, as you see on the right side of this slide. And every monthly donation that in that plan will be created as a deal associated with the plan. That's just a general overview of what that integration looks like. We can definitely answer any more questions at the end.
So the question around what happens post-donation is definitely a teaser into part 2 of this webinar series, but we want to make sure that we're really taking the idea of Flywheel and engaging folks and then delighting them and then re-pushing them through the life cycle very seriously. So leveraging the data that you can capture between the sync from Fundraise Up to HubSpot, you can then automate things like workflows, tasks for your development team, smart segmentation for how you follow up with folks, when, where, and why. And truly, the opportunities are absolutely endless. We are going to talk a little bit more around like data tracking, how you can optimize content, different ways to more deeply engage folks in the next webinar, and really appreciated that in the chat, I saw that most people are investing in the engage cycle, which is absolutely amazing. And that's an ongoing need. So we want to support you in having as many tools as possible to do that engagement in both a personalized and compelling way. All right. That was my plug for the next webinar.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Julia covered it. The next webinar is next week, in fact. And it is, you know, exactly what Julia said, building an omni-channel fundraising strategy. So I had no idea what the word omni-channel meant before I started talking to Julia. So that's the first thing. What is omni-channel fundraising? Next, why a consistent donor experience across all your channels is important. And finally, how to personalize this donation experience across all your different fundraising efforts. So we're very excited, and this next webinar is going to get a lot more in the weeds of, you know, how these two platforms really work and strategies to make them work well.
And I would say if you are a nonprofit or individual contributor who is using one or both or none of Fundraise Up and HubSpot technologies, and you want to deep dive a little bit, please reach out to Will or I. We are always happy to get on the phone and show you live how the sync works and what you can do afterwards, but very much invite you to come back next week and deep dive a little bit more with us. All right. Are there any questions? This is the opportunity. If you put them in the chat, I can do my best to go back and surface them. Otherwise, Tammy, we'd be happy to end on this note. We are also very excited for the integration. But please, folks, if you have questions, go into Slido and drop them in there. I think Justin and Will, do you have a link to the webinar that is coming up that you could drop in the chat? That would be very helpful.
Yes.
And I'm scrolling up.
Find one.
Okay. Will, this is a question for you. Have you seen any drop in performance with the change in tracking or cookie policies? Or does Fundraise Up lean more on informed decisions from a user's entry point than specific data on that user?
Yes, that is a really great question. So we at one point were using a cookie or two to collect some of this information. We're no longer. So we have moved away from that because of all these new tracking cookie policies. So we have not seen a drop in performance at all from that. No.
Would you recommend still upselling when donors are donating to a particular volunteer supporting our org? And Ashley, you might need to give a little bit more context.
I think it's a really great question.
Okay.
So we one thing we do when we have this upsell towards becoming a monthly donor, we actually have it capped at a certain amount. I think it's $200 right now. So, you know, if you're giving over $200, then actually we are not gonna give you that upsell to go to a monthly donor, because we know that you probably just want to collect that large donation. And we have not actually seen any drop in when people are giving to a certain volunteer or a certain designation. Because I think a lot of people, like, especially with a certain volunteer, they want to give recurring to that certain person. They have this personal connection with them. But I think it's a really great question for us to look into, especially for this particular use case. So thanks for bringing it up.
So let's see, is there or will there be a way to record the thank you email that Fundraise Up sends to online donors within their contact record in HubSpot? It's a really good question. Really great question.
As of right now, you cannot see that whole email in HubSpot. You can see that you know, they were contacted. You know, you can see the deal was created. You know that they were contacted through us. it's something we don't have right now, and that email being right there in HubSpot due to it just actually being a lot more complicated than you think. But it's something that we definitely want to look into for sure.
Great. Another one will, and the last one in the chat, and then we'll switch over to the Slido, but could you summarize the customer experience flexibility on the donation forms?
I'm a little bit confused by the question, but I'll try my best. Could you summarize the customer experience flexibility? Like the flexibility on how you can customize them is you can customize them however you want. There's definitely some things that we lock down because we know that they make sure the conversion rate is extremely high, like where the buttons are placed on the form, things like that. We've extensively A/B tested, but how that flow goes. Some of it is locked down. We know that collecting payment information before collecting personal information actually increases conversion rate extremely, another one significantly. But things like, do I want to have this upsell? You can choose to have that or not. What information do I want to collect from the donor? You get to choose what you want to collect. So there is a lot of customization in that, but some of the things are locked down a little bit.
Great. Are slides available after the presentation?
Yes, we can send out these slides for sure.
Great. And I would say we will also send out the link to the upcoming webinar and post it in the chat. All right, Will. We are on Stripe now, and some people are monthly donors. If we switch to Fundraise Up, what action do we need to take with them?
Yes. Okay. So and great. So if you would like to migrate those recurring donors over into Fundraise Up so that you can see them all on your dashboard, so that they get access to our donor portal, which is something I didn't even bring up, but every recurring donor gets a donor portal where they can manage their own gift. They can change their gift amount. They can change the date that the money's taken out of their bank account or whatever. So you don't have to field those calls. If you'd like to do that, it is a completely free process, and it is extremely easy, especially if you are on Stripe right now. So that's simply sending us filling out a form on our end, and our migration expert will work with you. And it's a very simple, seamless process. There's nothing happens to the donor. They don't have to resubmit anything or anything like that. It just very seamless, goes right into Fundraise Up.
Great. Can we use Fundraise Up data to trigger an email or ad delivery through HubSpot? And just to clarify, this is not, it sounds like post donation, where the answer is emphatically yes. But I believe it would be if somebody visited a form and did not donate, would there be a way to do a little bit of a lead capture and conversion? And I think my answer is going to be the same as yours, which is that is not currently how the integration works. We do need some data that is consentfully shared. So the donor, when they make the donation on Fundraise Up, that's what triggers the data sync. Now you can then use any information that you've collected from them during that process as a trigger within HubSpot to follow up. But you would not have the data about folks that maybe landed and bounced.
Exactly. 100%. That was right.
Will, can you send tax receipts monthly or annually, like letting folks choose which they would like to receive?
Currently, because it just automatically goes out as soon as the donor makes the donation, we only do monthly. So every time they're making that donation, they sign up for that recurring plan. Every time they make it, they get it. Because we don't know when, well, we do know, but they could be donating in the middle of the year and then go to the next middle of the next year, or they could, there's no set way that they're donating. We don't know they're going to donate 12 months. Maybe they'll only donate 3 months. So, or however it goes. So currently it is only monthly, but in their donor portal, they can log on and they can click one button and they'll donate a zip file of all their tax receipts. So we do compile them somewhat.
Great. How are peer-to-peer fundraisers integrated into the HubSpot CRM? Does the fundraiser auto get soft credit on their record when a donation comes in? This is a great question. And I would say that auto is the key word here. You can absolutely configure your contact records to attribute soft credit and take that information from Fundraise Up, assuming that you've done the field mapping. But that is definitely something that is not out of the box. You would need to configure it. And we can deep dive a bit more into it. But I would say HubSpot CRM at the level that you're integrating with Fundraise Up is enterprise, so custom objects. It is infinitely flexible. Pretty much anything that you can dream about how you want to architect your contact record, you can make it happen. And feel free to reach out to me. I can connect you with some dev resources. I just want to say I'm not super technical, so this is my threshold.
That's exactly right. Yeah, our integration is built so that we don't want to mess anything up in your HubSpot. We want to make it as simple as possible. And HubSpot has so many amazing ways you can set up automation, and we're never going to mess those up. So we send it in, and then you can set up your own automation in HubSpot.
Great. And Sal, I wish that you could be a co-presenter and jump in, but to this question around creating elements in Fundraise Up and embedding HTML code, Sal did just put a link in the chat that you can visit to see exactly how to take Fundraise Up elements and put them in the HubSpot CMS.
Exactly. Yep. That article explains it all.
Great. All right. I think we have one more question from Michael Glover, an open invitation for folks to continue to populate. This is super fun. Is there a way to input offline donations, such as a cash or check, to a fund campaign to track all donations through Fundraise Up? I can answer and say with HubSpot, there absolutely is. You would architect your campaign, you would have an offline activity event, and you would be able to input that way. I am not sure through Fundraise Up directly, but if you're using the HubSpot CRM as your source of truth, there's absolutely a way to do that.
That's exactly right, Julia. So in Fundraise Up, there is a way to input offline. You know, someone calls you and you need to process their credit card as they're giving you over the phone donation. We have a virtual terminal. You can definitely do that. But we see our platform as just one way of collecting donations, and all of that being stored in HubSpot as your one source of truth. So it would be almost redundant to put that into Fundraise Up and then put it into HubSpot when that's the one place where you're going to be storing all of your donation information. Great question, Michael.
All right. Any final questions? We will follow up with a link to the webinar, a link to this deck. We'll remove the live Slido, but you can see the questions that were asked. And definitely both Will and I put our emails in the chat. You can also always reach out to nonprofits@hubspot.com and get a live answer from me or somebody on my team. Find us on LinkedIn. Don't be shy. We love to answer questions and definitely learn from our community around needs that we can then be responsive to.
The link for the next webinar is going to be emailed out to all attendees. So thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure.
Great. Thanks, everybody.